The following program is brought to you in part by General Foods Corporation and in part by the Northwestern banks of the Twin Cities area.
Good evening. What's about to happen here tonight is a program called Clog Smog to Zip Trip, or How I Learned to Mass Transit. It's a title in need of an explanation, and we'll begin it in 1 minute. It is early any day, and anybody who is anywhere will soon want to be someplace else. Like 41,000 people in suburban Ramsey will go to St. Paul, 31,000 from Minneapolis to the Hennepin suburbs, 57,000 from the Hennepin suburbs to Minneapolis. 731,932 people will go somewhere in the next 3 hours. 5.5 million trips, 4.5 million by car, plugging up the freeways as fast as they're built. Highway Department calls it intolerable at rush hour. That's the nice way to say it. It's chewing up land, gas, money, there's the pollution, and the highway death toll. But rest easy, friend. Our Metropolitan Transit Commission is looking after us. The MTC spent years looking for the solution. And now the MTC has proposed a choo-choo train. The MTC doesn't call it a choo-choo train, of course. The MTC calls it the leading edge of technology. Some people say we don't need trains. We need personal rapid transit. The MTC says they're nuts. Then there's the Tommy Thompson Memorial Minneapolis People Mover. From the folks who brought you the downtown stadium, here's a new plan. A $53 million aerial bus to move people around downtown Minneapolis. It's the answer to the question no one has asked. There's a man in St. Paul, John Wendland is his name, who has proposed putting big downhill tubes off tall buildings, like the IDS Tower, and riding bicycles down them. In his letter to us, he wrote, "I have enclosed here an individual mass transportation system which I believe will be able to solve just about every problem we have in the 20th century in this particular area." Well, whether it's tubes or people movers or PRT or trains, to succeed, they'll have to separate us from the mass transit we love the most, the automobile.
Getting in a car is freedom. And maybe that's one of the things that they enjoy is the freedom of being able to go and do what you want to do. It took me 3 years to convince my wife that she should have a car of her own. And once I did, there's no way I could ever take it away from her. That car is her ticket to freedom.
Steve Mignon was a full-time advertising executive and a part-time race driver until he decided it was cars he loved most, quit his job, started selling race car preparation parts from a business he calls The Book.
One of the things in driving, which a lot of people do, is they lose their identity. You get into a car, you're no longer a person, you're a Chevrolet or you're a Ford. And this is why there's so much inconsideration on the freeway. I think they try and make the automobile the world ends every 15 or 20 minutes, if you want to believe the newspapers. So, you know, after you live through 5, 10, 15, 20 of these crises, you start to become a little callous to them. The energy crisis is just one more. The pollution crisis, just one more. I believe we really do have these crises. I think people riding public transportation would help. However, I'm not motivated strongly enough to go take a bus to work. I just couldn't do it. It changed my lifestyle way too much.
97% of the people who live in the Twin Cities don't ride the bus. And everyone in this debate agrees the numbers aren't enough. The argument is over what to do about it. Doug Kelm, chairman of the Metropolitan Transit Commission, favors a train system. David Graven, Metropolitan Council, doesn't like trains, thinks PRT may be the answer. Ed Anderson, University of Minnesota, says he knows PRT is the answer. Tim McEwen, Minnesota Public Interest Research Group, says the MTC is deceiving people. Doug Kelm is in the middle of a 4-year term as chairman of the MTC. He is also in the middle of the angry fight over whether it's buses or trains or PRT which will move people from here to there. Buses are part of the MTC plan, part of what they call a family of vehicles. Buses would cover more streets more often than now, would travel 900 miles of express routes by 1990. But what brings Doug Kelm and the MTC under attack is not buses, but trains, automated trains that would run spoke-like trips from the center cities into the suburbs. The first part of the train plan would be finished about 1981. 37 miles of track laid over and under the ground, and hundreds of 40 passenger cars in trains humming back and forth. If they'd built it last year, it would have cost more than $500 million. By 1981, it would cost much more. The MTC spent more than 4 years working on its plan, spent more than $2 million on consultants' fees. When Doug Kelm delivered it to the Metropolitan Council, the council said it was too much money, too little service, and turned it down.
So, in accordance with law, we did our duty and went to the legislature. And the House of Representatives, after many hearings by the Senate Committee on Metropolitan Affairs and the Subcommittee on Transit, gave us overwhelming approval. It's by one of the largest majorities that any bill passed up there this past year. And they told the Metropolitan Transit Commission with that bill to go ahead and start implementing. That bill was sent over to the Senate, where it will be heard in January or February of next year, and I confidently predict that the Senate will do the same thing as the House of Representatives did.
The newest, fanciest, shiniest train in the whole country is here in the Oakland-San Francisco Bay Area. They call it BART. It runs on wide cushioned rails for 75 miles from the brown-colored suburbs of Concord and Richmond into dark tunnels through Oakland and under the bay. A silver, electric, computerized community sculpture. It is a train like none before it. As BART moves, it leaves red footprints across the front wall of an underground room in Oakland. There is a dim buzz of serious conversation, a half-dozen controllers trading directions, tracking moving lights across the wall. A central computer here is keeping BART on schedule, tracing all of the trains at once, ordering them faster or slower by fractions to stay on time. There is someone riding in the front cabin of BART trains, an attendant, they call him, but electronics are in control. What he can do is keep the doors open until people are on board, and he can make it stop. A year ago, when the computers failed, a BART train ran off the end of the track and into a sand pile, and the system has been under attack ever since for a chain of computer foul-ups. Actually, BART people are glad it's running at all. The whole system still isn't open. They're hoping it will be by spring, and that would make it nearly 3 years behind schedule. The ride on BART is smooth for a railroad. The cars are comfortably big with wide windows and upholstered seats and carpet on the floor. There is about as much noise as inside a jet plane. BART was financed by the biggest bond issue voters have approved any time in the history of the world. $794 million of the now nearly $1.5 billion cost. But it's a heck of The concept of the railroad train has never really changed. The concept is the same whether it's the earliest steam engine or the old noisy New York subway, or if it's the Bay Area rapid transit. Railroad track is expensive, so nobody can afford much of it, and that makes getting people to the train difficult, except in places where there are already a lot of people in a small area like New York and Chicago. Since all the trains run on the same track, that means they have to be spaced far enough apart so they don't run into each other when one stops at a station. Since they run far apart, that means waiting, and train passengers do a lot of that. And since trains run far apart, that means each train has to carry a lot of people, and that means crowds, not privacy. Since there are a lot of people on the train, that means stopping at every station, whether you want off or not. BART can hit 80 miles an hour, but it averages only 40 because it has to stop so often. The only way to average 40 is to keep the stations far enough apart. They're 2.5 miles on BART. The MTC plans 1.3 miles for the Twin Cities. Since trains follow their route, not yours, that means transfers, and that means learning complicated routes. BART expects to lose $100 million in the next 2 years, expects to lose money indefinitely because in San Francisco, where they built the country's fanciest train, most people still choose to drive.
The competition is not with the streetcar. It is not with the old commuter train. The competition, or with your feet, or bicycles, it's with the car. You can take it when you want it. It's point to point. You take it where you want to go. You don't have to walk anywhere. And it's private. That's not accidental. If you're going to try to compete with that, you ought to get something that offers some of the same things that the car does. See, the MTC has made a big thing about the family of vehicles, but the family of vehicles is not a winning concept. It's an admission of failure. It's saying we're going to have to transfer. We're going to have to use a number of vehicles to get where you want to go. Well, one of the things that's made the car so popular is that you don't have to use a family of vehicles. You can use a car.
He says when he started looking into mass transit, he thought the Twin Cities needed a train. But when his Metropolitan Council Committee wrote its report, it said trains wouldn't work. Transportation systems are changing too fast. PRT and dual mode are coming. The recommendation is to put on more buses, build some special bus roadway, and then wait.
If anyone wants anything in the way of mass transfer the next 10 years, it's going to be a bus. That's all the council has really said, is that there's no sense locking yourself into a major capital commitment, a railroad or a subway, unless it's going to do something. And every projection that we can see, council has, and if you examine the MTC's figures closely, you'll see that they're talking about carrying 5 or 6% of the people, the trips. We don't think that's going to be enough. We don't think that's going to make any difference in really when it comes to talking about air pollution or energy or anything else, because there's still 95 or 96 or 94% of the trips being carried how? They're carried all by private auto. And that isn't good enough.
Projections still made by the Metropolitan Council are that in this 7-county area, we'll have about double the number of trips per day in 1990 than we do today. So a system that can get 10% of the trips obviously doesn't even begin to hack the problem.
Dr. Edward Anderson was a top aerospace engineer. He designed the guidance systems for Polaris submarines. But he gave it up to learn about mass transit, and he's become one of the leading advocates of new systems, teaches it at the University of Minnesota. Ed Anderson doesn't like what the MTC has done. He's set out to see that personal rapid transit, PRT, gets a fair hearing. Personal rapid transit begins with cars big enough to hold about a half dozen people or more. Make a car that size and guideways can be small. Cost for a mile of system will be less. Then take the station stops off the main line and onto a siding track. Empty cars can wait at stations until one passenger is ready to leave, pushes a button for where he wants to go. PRT picks up speed on the siding and merges automatically into traffic, goes non-stop to the destination. It's possible to someday put lines of PRT over a whole city, and if PRT cars could run a half-second apart, a single line would carry more people than 3 lanes of today's freeway. The MTC says the system will never work that well. Ed Anderson says it will. Ed Anderson has carried the story of PRT to meetings across the world. A tall man in an Abraham Lincoln beard with a very modern message.
A total system is cheaper if you go to small vehicles because you don't have to support as much load on the guideway.
Very frankly, a lot of faculty members have gotten themselves locked into working on relatively trivial problems. And the thing is, if you can work on a significant problem, why work on a trivial one?
PRT system is not an evolution of a train. It's a brand new type of transportation system.
So I guess I also believe in this old philosophy, which has been around a long time, that if you lose your life in a cause, you'll find it. Life is a heck of a lot more fun for me doing what I've been doing than it was sitting in my office only teaching classes and doing research that nobody else cared about. Maybe another thing that may keep me going in it is sheer orneriness.
Transportation Technology Incorporated, TTI, is one of the companies making new mass transit. Uniflow in the Twin Cities is another. TTI has been running a full-sized test track near Denver, a 6-passenger car floating on a cushion of air. Producer Mike Faring took a ride on it, talked about it with Dr. Anderson.
The vehicle leaves the station as soon as one person or a small group traveling together come into the vehicle. You don't ride with strangers. Some of my sociologist friends say one violates one's psychic space if some undesirable stranger comes aboard a vehicle. This way, a trip like this would be more desirable because it's private. You ride with who you want to ride with, just as an automobile. In terms of the stations are not gathering points like in a big train system. You come to the station, pay your fare, or put your credit card into a slot, punch your destination, and go. You don't stand around and wait. The personal security of a system like this is considerably higher than it would be on, say, a train system.
Why is that?
If some undesirable person gets aboard, you can sound an alarm, alert the police at the station you happen to be boarding at, or if the vehicle is already underway, the vehicle can be directed to go right to a police station instead of going to the destination station.
In September, the people of Denver voted to pay a 0.5% sales tax for a transit plan, including personal rapid transit. They'll get a federal grant for the first PRT test track.
One reason I think that Denver was able to grab off the federal demonstration grant and is moving towards the PRT system is that we are locked in with the last dying twitch of an old outmoded system. That's what's happened here. Everyone's fascinated with a subway. Going to have a subway. Well, subways don't carry anything. Holes in the ground don't carry anything. Vehicles do. But you got to get that vehicle going where people are and where people want to go. And our people want to go a lot of different places at a lot of different times. And a fixed rail system, in the council's judgment, does not suit those needs. Neither, and I stress this, does the bus. I mean, the advantage of the bus is it's here now, and it's cheaper. But in terms of a long-term solution, there's no more long-term solution than the MTC subway plan.
Ed Anderson wants PRT. The Metropolitan Council thinks it may be the answer. The Minnesota Public Interest Research Group, MPIRG, will include PRT in a plan it will release in the next few weeks. MPIRG researcher Tim McEwen has spent more than a year studying the Transit Commission train scheme. What he's found is massive deception by the MTC, a continuing attempt to discredit personal rapid transit and make the train sound better than it is.
They've designed the perfect plan for post-World War I Eastern United States urban America. Basically, what their system does is lay out a few radial lines coming out of Minneapolis downtown and coming out of St. Paul downtown. Now, back in the 1920s, the predominant commuting pattern was for people to live within the core city or perhaps the inner suburbs and make the trip downtown every day and then make the trip back to the suburbs in the afternoon. However, the situation now, particularly with the advent of widespread automobile ownership, is that there's no single one concentrated point where all the trips head. And if you were to draw a map on which were pictured the origin and destination of every trip, what you would have would be a picture, instead of looking like the spokes of a wheel, it would look more like a ball of yarn. The trips start everywhere and they go everywhere, and just trying to handle the trips that move between the suburbs and the downtown is just hopefully inadequate to solving the area's transportation needs. Basically what they've done, they made a decision in the late 60s that we should build a train system, and then they commissioned a couple $1 million worth of studies to justify a decision they made before they ever did any studies.
MPIRG backs up its charges with a 100-page report detailing what's been happening. Its best evidence comes from the MTC itself. The MTC says traffic will more than double by 1990. It says a train would have slight impact on traffic, little effect on pollution, questionable impact on development. And then it concludes, we should build a train. Well, mass transit is the legislature's problem now, and our problem too. And see you at the rush hour.
Hey, thanks for the lift. It's all right. I really appreciate a ride. It's hard to get them out there on the freeway, you know?
Kind of heavy traffic this time of night, huh?
Yeah, it's hard to get a ride in the freeway. Hey, I had to ditch my car out there, you know. A traffic jam on Xerxes?
I saw that.
Yeah.
You telling me you left a perfectly good car sitting back
Brand new
there?
Oldsmobile.
Yeah?
Yeah. Hey, if you could take me to a used car dealer, I'd appreciate it. I just want to pick up another car.
Easy come, easy go, huh?
Well, you know, it's the only way to deal with the traffic jams these days. Just ditch.
And that's not the only way to deal with them.
Yeah, who are you?
Some people call me the Fox.
You're not the freeway fox.
The same.
Hey, they say you've never ditched a car on a traffic jam.
That's right.
Boy, I find that hard to believe.
All I gotta do is got a good mind for tactics, you know, have a solid set of wheels. You make by it.
Looks like you should have ditched this pig a long time ago.
What are you talking about?
Well, it's so beat up looking.
You know, this is a brand new car. I only got 300 miles on it.
Well, how do you get so beat up?
I took a sledgehammer to it. You know, you got a beat-up car, people let you in tight situations on a freeway. They figure you got nothing to lose, so why mess around, huh?
Yeah, I hate to spoil your fun here, Fox. You got a tailgater bothering you now.
Tailgater?
Look at him, he's really close.
You grab a hubcap from the back seat and throw it out the window.
Hey, where'd you get all these things?
Yeah, it doesn't matter. That'll do. Throw it out and you'll bang. Go ahead. Yeah.
Bang! Hey, you went in the ditch.
Yeah.
How'd you do that?
Well, you threw that hubcap out, he thought I had a blowout, see? And I hit my independent brake light switch up here. A guy panicked, slammed on his brakes. That's what happens. He won't bother me again.
No, I guess not.
Yeah, you know, it's a matter of survival these days. Sometime soon they're going to take away a guy's opportunity, his right to drive his own car, you know?
Yeah.
Nothing but mass transit systems.
Yeah.
Gravity tubes from the IDS Center.
Yeah.
Monorails,
I
buses.
think they haven't even finished 35W yet, huh?
Yeah. Sheesh. Did you see that ambulance? Those guys drive like they own a road, don't
It's a good thing you passed them, huh?
Yeah. Well, as long as you keep your wits about you, you'll survive all right. I was coming home the other day, Highway 55. Hit the Mendota Bridge there, big tie-up. I'd take the Minnesota River all the way into Burnsville.
Hey.
But you know I survived.
Hey, Fox.
That's the most important
Hey,
thing.
Fox, look ahead of you there. Slow down.
That's a traffic jam.
I've never seen that many cars in my whole life.
Yeah.
There's hundreds of them out there. Hey, they're on both sides of you now, too, you know?
Yeah.
They're piling up behind you.
Yeah?
They got you penned in, Fox. Looks like this is one you're not going to escape from.
And nuts. Start taking apart that door over there.
What?
We're going to take apart this car. It should take us about 4 hours or so.
Take apart the car?
And we reassemble it on the other side of the median strip and beat the rush hour traffic going the other way.
This country's schools are in the middle of a fight over such things as integration and education alternatives. The Minneapolis campaign for school board is shaping up as a two-way split over what should be done. Next week on More on Sunday.
More on Sunday was brought to you in part by General Foods Corporation and in part by the Northwestern banks of the Twin Cities area.